Yeah, I definitely think that I wouldn't say I recommend it for anyone. I think that women should
Mhm.
birth how they feel safest and
Yes.
how they feel most comfortable because that's going to provide the best birth outcome. And for
Hmm.
me, it took a lot of just trusting myself and a lot of time to like come to terms with it and do a lot of research and feel prepared for it in a way and just allowing myself to surrender to not knowing exactly how it's going to play out because of course birth is birth and it's going to happen how it happens, and just kind of submit to not being in control 100% and just
Hmm.
trusting my body and my baby and really like being in tune with baby throughout the whole pregnancy and journey and just connect with them and connect with myself and yeah.
Hey, you're listening to Empowered Births at Home with me, Esmeralda, the home birth doula, as your host. I am a mama of three, fellow home birther, and entrepreneur. I am completely obsessed with birth, more specifically, home birth. And this is a podcast where women share their empowering home birth stories, along with the journey that led them down the path to home birth. Whether you're currently pregnant, planning a home birth with your first or fourth baby, or even just someone who is a complete birth nerd like me, this is the podcast for you. So let's get into this week's empowering home birth story. We are on episode 36 today. We will be talking with Chelsea, and she will be sharing with us her free birth story. So let's go ahead and bring Chelsea on.
I'm Jordan. I am from the Midwest, Central Illinois. I have two daughters. My daughter Rory, she's 3, and Nellie is 4 months. I am a stay-at-home mom, but I have a little side business where I do postpartum education and I also make herbal remedies, mostly teas for postpartum moms. Also great for menopause and just all around women's reproductive health. But mostly I just stay at home with my babies.
Yeah, awesome. And so were both of your babies home births, or
They
was
were
it just one?
not. Just
Okay.
my second. My first was born in the hospital.
Hmm.
We lived in Hawaii at the time, and
Okay.
she was born 2021, so it was pretty pandemic, was still going on, and it was a straightforward birth, hospital birth, I would say, but I felt, like it could have been better. So I
Hmm.
immediately was just interested in all things birth and kind of dove into home birth and doula work and all the things after that.
Hmm. Yeah. What was the deciding factor before having your second, or was it during your second that you decided to have a home birth?
So it was probably before my first was born. Before my first was
Mhm.
born, I was over it. I was over going to the doctors every week to sit in the, office for 5 minutes. And I was just like, I had a friend who had a home birth. So she really was the one that inspired me to do it. But, I was already had the plan to go and birth in the hospital. It was kind of too late at that point to switch to having a home birth for me. Just I didn't know enough and it was my first baby, but I was like, oh, like if I have another kid, that's what I want to do next time for sure. And so,
Okay.
right after we came home from the birth, like I said, it was pretty straightforward, simple hospital birth, but I was like, I could have just stayed home. I should have just
Hmm.
stayed home and had the baby. So that's what I did last the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going into your second birth, what was the journey of like finding a provider for that and everything like that?
So I started off, we knew immediately that I wanted to have a home birth. There was no other option really in my mind. And I decided to look into midwives around the area and I did some calls and I found one that I really connected with and she was great. And I did one appointment with her. She did some blood work for me and it was really laid back, but there was just something in the back of my mind. I really can't explain it other than like I had this feeling, had this calling that I really just wanted it to be me and my husband there and that
Mm.
I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to have a midwife there. And I know that's not typical, I would say. Like I think that it's great that you have, women should be supporting women in birth. Like I am a doula in a way. I do postpartum work now, but I just felt like I didn't want anyone else but my husband, and my daughter ended up being there as well, which was beautiful. But I knew that I could do it on my own. I
Hmm.
really go into myself, and I just like, I don't even think I said more than 3 words to my husband my whole birth. He was just there to watch me basically. I just kind
Yeah.
of am doing my own thing. And so I decided to part ways with our midwife. She was great, but I just decided to do it on my own. And I did some prenatal care for myself. We did one ultrasound, and I took my blood pressure every so often and tested my pee for proteins and stuff like that. So I kind of just did it on my own.
Yeah. That's awesome. How far along were you, if you remember, when you kind of cut ties with your midwife?
I think it was really early. I would say like 16 weeks,
Okay.
maybe before that, maybe like 14.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And I do just want to touch on it for anyone who's listening and might not know that this is even a choice. So basically, when you cut ties with a midwife, it is a wild pregnancy, people like to call it, where you kind of take on all of your prenatal care and you just kind of make all of the decisions yourself and you're the full authority. Even when you have a midwife, you can still be the full authority, but it's even more kind of just coming into your power of knowing what's right for you, for your body, and for your baby, and not having a midwife who has all of these guidelines that they need to check off boxes from. Because even though they're not obese and they're not in the hospital, they still have guidelines that they need to follow. So they still will make you take certain tests and do certain monitoring. And maybe you don't agree with all of those. So when you have a wild pregnancy, you get to decide everything for yourself and you don't have to follow those guidelines of a midwife, essentially. So just for anyone who maybe is like, oh, you can do that, that's a thing. That's what it is. And it is an option that you can do. Obviously, do more research into it before just blindly cutting off a midwife and doing it by yourself. There is a lot of research that needs to be done because there's just things you need to know that maybe
Mhm.
you wouldn't if you don't have the education. And so just make sure you're not going into it blindly if that's what you decide to do. But it is an option, like I said. And then, like you said, a free birth is an option too. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, basically, the midwife is just not in the birth space at all. You don't have a medical provider in the birth space, and it is an option. Like I said, it's something that people can choose to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that it's, no, it's, I wouldn't say I recommend it for anyone. I think that women should
Mhm.
birth how they feel safest and
Yes.
how they feel most comfortable, because that's going to provide the best birth outcome. And for
Hmm.
me, it took a lot of just trusting myself and a lot of time to like come to terms with it and do a lot of research and feel prepared for it in a way, and just allowing myself to surrender to not knowing exactly how it's going to play out, because of course birth is birth and it's going to happen how it happens, and just kind of submit to not being in control 100% and just
Hmm.
trusting my body and my baby, and really like being in tune with baby throughout the whole pregnancy and journey, and just connect with them and connect with myself. And yeah, it was a
Yeah.
really beautiful experience. And I don't think that I'm not an advocate for free birth, I would say. I don't think that, oh, you should just not have a midwife. And I
Hmm.
think that they can be a very, very useful tool in your birthing situation, and that I think a lot of women need more support. And that's amazing that midwives are there, and, birth keepers or doulas or however you want to go about it. You have options, and having no one there is also an option. So
Hmm.
that's just the route that I took. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no right or wrong way. It's just a matter of knowing that there's an option like that and seeing if that might be the best fit for you. And if not, then you have the choice of getting a midwife too. So it's like you can kind of see which one would be the best for you. So that's awesome that you were able to kind of stand in your power and know what was right for you was to not have a midwife there. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really awesome. And I do think that maybe would have wanted a midwife there if my husband wasn't like 100% on board. But he completely trusted me and trusted my process. Even if he was nervous, he didn't show it to me. And he just, told me, I trust you. I trust what your decision is. It's completely up to you, and I'll be there for you. And so that is what we chose.
Yeah, awesome. Was there even just like one thing that really stood out to you during your pregnancy that was a really helpful resource for you to go through with not having like a medical provider at your birth?
Yes, there are a couple of Facebook groups that I joined. I listened to so much of the Freebirth Society podcast. I don't know how many episodes they have, but I went through a bunch. So that was a really nice to just hear other women's stories, positive birth stories, and it was just like, if they can do it, I can do it. And just hearing everyone's stories and continuing to listen to it and fill my head with like positive stories was great for like my mental health. And I really had to be really selective on who I followed on Instagram and what content I was consuming, especially surrounding motherhood and birth and all of that. Especially as it got closer to time, I just was really selective and tried to stay off of social media a little bit, because it can be really great, but it can also be really anxiety inducing and just too much
Yeah.
information overload. But I would say, yes, Free Birth Society was great for. I didn't do any of their like courses or anything. I just listened to the podcast. I joined a couple of Facebook groups and talked with other women who had had free births, and we were able to ask questions and get advice and whatnot. And then there's this link. I think it's an Australian website, but
Mm.
someone just kind of put together like a bunch of information on unassisted birth, what could go wrong, what could happen. I would say not necessarily go wrong, but things that could happen and what to do if they do happen, how to cut a cord and things like that. That was just really information based. And so I found that really helpful as well, to feel
Mhm.
confident and prepared. And my husband cut the cord, so he did some research on how we wanted to do it, and if we wanted to burn it or cut it or have a what is it called, a
A lotus birth?
yes, we
Mhm.
did not do that. I think that's really neat, but I have a 3-year old and I just didn't see that as being realistic for me
Mhm.
personally, so we just cut it. But there's
Mhm.
plenty of options, and it was really fun and cool to just dive in and be all about birth for months and months. My head was just all about birth and my birth plan and what was going to happen. So it was really amazing experience for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll leave all of those resources that you said down below in the show notes. So anyone who's interested in looking at those or kind of just diving deeper into free birth can go ahead and find those. And so if you want to share anything from your pregnancy, you can, or if you just wanted to go straight into like labor and how all that started, you can go into that.
Okay. Yeah. Pregnancy was really straightforward for me. I was very, very sick for the first trimester, but that was pretty typical for me. My first baby, I was also pretty nauseous, morning sickness. This time I was just so drained of energy and so sick. I was actually just like looking back, because I just found out I was pregnant about a year ago around this time. And so I just was thinking about this time, and I was kind of miserable for a little bit of it. And but once for second trimester hit, I felt so much better, and it was just a really healthy pregnancy. I wasn't worried. I found myself in my first pregnancy being filled with anxiety. All the appointments I would go to, I would leave like just worried and just anxious and unsure. And this time I just felt really empowered and confident and just in tune with my body and my baby. I did a lot of yoga and breath work, and that really helped. And then just, yep, listening to the podcasts and hearing other women talk about their free births was so, so helpful for me as well. I went to 41 weeks. So around 40 weeks, you start to get that like, okay, when is this baby coming? And my first pregnancy, I went to 41 weeks exactly as well. So I should have known, but I was definitely having some, not doubts, but like just that anxious awaiting feeling of like, okay, when is it going to happen? And just kind of ready to go and just not sure. I had a lot of Braxton Hicks, a lot of practice contractions, a lot of, false labor ish things going on for like the last week. So, many times I was like, is this it? Okay, no, it's not it. But the morning I woke up at 1 in the morning and I had to pee and I had a bloody show, which I did not have with my first. So I was like, okay, like this could mean that the baby's going to come next week still. Like it doesn't really mean too much. I know that usually when you have your bloody show, it means like, okay, the baby's coming soon, but you don't really know how soon. So I woke my husband up and I said, oh, you're probably going to stay home from work tomorrow. And I tried to go back to sleep and I couldn't go back to sleep. So I got up and I was having contractions. They were like 5 to 7 minutes apart. And my yeah, everyone was asleep and it was just quiet in my house. And I made some labor aid and brewed some tea and kind of just tidied my house and tried to distract myself really. And the contractions were not painful and they were pretty far apart. So I was like, okay, like maybe tomorrow I'll have the baby. We'll see. I got in the shower. They started to get a little bit more intense, I would say. And so around like 2 a.m., I got in the shower and that was great and nice. And I got out and was kind of just milling around my house. I couldn't sleep. It was mostly like excitement, like, oh, okay, this
Yeah.
is probably the real thing. And I heard my daughter stirring in bed. So I went and laid with her for a little bit. And it was like, I think about 3:30 in the morning. I couldn't lay down in the bed anymore. The
Mhm.
contractions had kind of picked up and they were, taking all of my attention. So I decided to get up and I came out in my living room. I intended to have a water birth, but it was 3 in the morning and our toddler was sleeping and my husband was asleep. And so I was just like, oh, I don't want to wake him up. And I don't know how soon this is going to be. So I was kind of just in my own world. And I really enjoyed being on my yoga ball and just kind of rocking my hips back and forth. I listened to some really meditative, like peaceful music. And I had a little ball like to roll your feet on, if you know
Oh,
what I
okay.
mean, to stretch your feet out. So it was
Mhm.
like a little spiky ball, and I had that in my hand. And every contraction that came, I would just squeeze it or like roll it down my leg, and that was really helping. And I did that for probably about 30 minutes and then things were really starting to pick up and I had a couple like just back to back contractions and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I should wake my husband up, like maybe this is happening now and not tomorrow. So I woke him up and he came and just sat on the couch and I continued to kind of do my thing for a few minutes and I decided I wanted to get back in the shower. My first birth, I really loved the shower. The hospital that was at had a shower and I was in there pretty much the whole time.
Mhm.
So I decided to get back in the shower and I didn't even make it to the shower. I was puking and
Oh.
I just had a minute and I was like, oh man, I think this is transition. I was still kind of in denial. I was like, this is happening too quickly. Like I still have more time. But when I was puking, I was like, yep, okay. This is a telltale sign, like transition is close. And I hopped in the shower after that and I kind of labored in there, had my contractions, and it was getting pretty intense. I was vocalizing at this point, and I decided to get on my hands and knees in the shower. Our shower is small and not a great place to give birth. So I knew I wasn't going to give birth in the shower. And, when I had woken my husband up like an hour or 45 minutes before this, he was like, do you want me to fill the birth pool up? And I was like, no, it's too late. It's never going to be full in time, I don't think. So I just got in the shower and I did that for a little bit and I decided it was time to get out. I was feeling a little pushy in the shower and I wanted to just let it happen on its own. I didn't want to force the push. So I
Mhm.
just tried to like hold it in kind of and
Yeah.
breathe through it. And I got out of the shower and crawled onto my living room floor and things got really intense, really fast. I was being quite loud and my daughter woke up. So she came out and sat on the couch with my husband and she had all the emotions. She was crying, she was kind of laughing at me. She didn't I had prepared her for birth in like some ways, but our plan was for my father-in-law to come and get her while I was in labor if it wasn't in the middle of the night. If it was in the middle of the night, I said, well, I hope she stays asleep through it. If not, she's going to be there at the birth. I tried not to have too much of an expectation about that because I couldn't control it at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so it ended up being in the middle of the night and she woke up from me being pretty loud and she came out and yeah, she was she was great. She did such a good job. She was kind of just enamored with me, like what is going on. She's a little concerned. She didn't like that I was being loud. She was like, Mama, you're roaring like a bear. And I was like, yeah, I am. I'm doing really hard work. And between contractions, I would try to smile at her and, tell her everything's okay. And my husband was there with her and telling her, mommy's having the baby. She's bringing your baby to us and your baby sister to us. And she eventually kind of calmed down and was just hanging out with us. And this all happened quite fast, I would say. I think she probably woke up about, I would say probably 5, and my daughter was born at 5:45. So for
Mm.
45 minutes, I was, I would say actively pushing out on the floor in our living room. And she would tell me to take deep breaths, and she would say, there's no need to worry, Mama. She was 2, almost 3 at the time. So it was just amazing. And to have her there was so special. And I was really in my own head, but she would like bring me back because, when you're a mom, like I was just more worried about her than about me giving birth. I was like, I just want to make sure that she's okay and she's not, freaked out by it. So I was like making sure I smiled at her and told her everything was okay. And then soon enough, like the baby was coming, and my husband got down to kind of help me. And he said the head was out. And instinctively, I felt like I needed more room. I like kind of popped my leg up and
Mm.
was in a different position, kind of leaned onto our like TV stand. And then the next contraction came and baby came out. My husband caught her, kind of handed her up between my legs, and I sat back and just held her. And my daughter joined me on the floor. And she was, we were both laughing and crying, and there was just so much like oxytocin flowing through the room. It was so beautiful. And yeah, it was really kind of a straightforward birth, and just no, I don't want to say nothing special because, of course, it was so special, but it was simple. It was just
Mhm.
birth. And then I got in my bed, and I was very uncomfortable with the placenta still in. So I did, and I was having the contractions, baby nursed and latched, but I probably laid in my bed for like 10 minutes. And then I was like, I got to get up. I got to get the placenta out. So I went to the bathroom and pushed over a bowl in the toilet, and probably for like a minute, and then it just plopped on out. It was huge. I had like a 2-pound placenta. I wanted to weigh it to see because I was like, oh my gosh, this is gigantic.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I was so uncomfortable with it still inside. And
Mhm.
after that, I just crawled into bed. My father-in-law did come pick up my daughter after about an hour or so in the morning, and she went and had breakfast with him and hung out while my husband cleaned up. And we both just laid in bed and snuggled the baby. And it was really beautiful and just so, so simple. And yeah, I
Mhm.
feel like that's my birth story. That's it.
Yeah, that's amazing and really beautiful to hear. I loved everything that you shared with us, especially how you had said that you kind of weren't putting any expectations on where your daughter would be or how that would go. Because, like you said, birth happens the way it's going to happen. We can't always plan everything to a T, even though it's nice to think about like what your birth plans, what you would want them to look like.
Yes,
It's great not to like hang on to them and be like, it has to go this way
for
or it's
sure.
not going to be perfect. So just kind of putting that expectation like out of the window and being like, if this happens, it's fine. But if this happens, it's also fine.
Yes.
And it sounds like it went perfectly well, even if she was having a little bit of worry at the beginning. It's not like she's traumatized now today from
Right.
it. Like
Yeah,
everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. So.
definitely. Yeah, I'm so glad. Like looking back, I'm really glad that she was there because now is her image of birth. That's what she knows as birth. Like she saw birth happen at such a young age, and it wasn't traumatic. It wasn't in the hospital. I didn't, nothing was bad. She doesn't have this scary story about birth. She's just like, yeah, my sister was born in my living room, and then we went to
Mhm.
sleep, and I went to grandpa's and had breakfast, like just another normal day. And I had a little sister, and it was amazing. I hope that she one day wants to have a home birth, and it's just, yeah, I'm so glad looking back that she was there. But I did think, for my husband's sake, because it was kind of a lot to put on him to manage her and manage me. I, thought that maybe we'd make plans for her to go. But all in all, how it happened was the perfect way for it to have happened. And my husband did amazing. He really, like I said, we probably spoke like 3 different times during the whole process. I told him what I needed. I kind of just barked orders at him, just turn the shower water up hotter, give me my water to drink. Other than that, I really didn't need outside support. I was so in my own head and just in my little birth world, doing my own thing, and it worked out perfectly. He was just there to witness me, and I couldn't have asked for more. He took care of me afterwards, and I laid in bed for 5 days, and he brought me food and took care of our daughter. So he did everything I could have asked for and more. And that's all the support that I felt like I needed from him. So, yeah, it was
Yeah,
really great.
that's awesome. For postpartum, was there anything that you guys chose to do yourselves that normally a midwife would do? Like, did you guys weigh the baby? Did you do footprints? Did you do measurements? What did you guys choose to do?
We didn't do footprints, which I wish we would have kind of,
Mhm.
but we did weigh the baby. We, yep, did her measurements, weighed the baby. We didn't give her a bath or anything, just kind of wiped her down. And but other than that, I think that's about it. She she was breathing right away. She instantly let out a cry, and right when she came out. So I had no worries or issues with that. Otherwise, I might have done some suctioning. Just I think intuitively I would have done that, but I didn't feel the need to. She was breathing just fine. So yeah, we really just weighed her because I wanted to know, and we took the time and the date, and we made her like a little, not a birth certificate, but a certificate of birth, I would say. This
Mhm.
said she was born at home this time, this day. Yeah. And yeah, other than that, we just kind of hung out. I took some herbs for bleeding. I didn't feel that I like was bleeding too much or anything. I felt really good. I didn't feel
Yeah.
really like lightheaded or anything. If I would have or felt like I was bleeding too much, then I probably would have kind of taken the herbs like more. I would have kept up with it and really, been watching it, but I didn't feel too concerned about it. I had some tinctures. I did shepherd's purse. I took one time,
Mm.
and then I did like an after ease tincture that's from Wish Garden, which just helps mostly with the cramps afterwards, which was very intense, I would say. I think I've heard it said that they get worse with each baby after your first, and they weren't too bad with my first, but it was pretty intense with the second, especially when she would breastfeed. So I had my husband keep up with that for me, so I was taking the tincture to help, and that it did really help, but it was pretty
Mhm.
intense.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a lot of women say that too with every birth, that it just gets more intense.
Yeah.
And I've taken the after ease too, and it does help a lot. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I'll link down below too for anyone, because I feel like that helps a lot of women who do feel those after pains because I've had multiple children.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so, if anyone wants to kind of connect with you, you said that you do some postpartum work and you also sell like different herbal teas and things like that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so all my Instagram is at Seeds of Life Apothecary, and all the links are on there. I have like the link tree and whatnot to my website, and I mostly am on Instagram. I also have a Facebook. It's the same thing. But I will be hosting my first workshop in January for postpartum education. So I'm really excited about that. I'll be getting some signups and emails and all the things. I'm trying to get it all prepared. So I have a couple months to come up and get everything collected for it. But I'm really excited about that. So you can find me on Instagram, follow me there, and I'll be posting all the updates from there.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
I also have my apothecary, all the herbal teas and elixirs. I do cacao and herbal postpartum bath salts. They're all on the website as well. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. The workshop, is it going to be virtual so anyone can join, or is it going to be
Yes.
local? Okay.
It is going to be virtual. I would love to eventually host something local, but I just don't. I feel like I want to make it more accessible. So I'm going with virtual for now. Maybe I would
Mhm.
do both in the future. But my first one will be virtual, hosted on Zoom, so that I can have multiple people join and we can all discuss together. I think what helped me most with birth and postpartum and just learning how to take care of myself in postpartum was talking with other women and seeing what they did. And so that's what I would like to do, is to be able to have an open conversation about it. People can ask their questions and we can all talk together. So I think that would be really helpful for people to not only get my opinion and listen to me blab on about things, but to hear from other women and hear other women's questions, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but
Mhm.
that's relative to me. So yeah, I think that'll be the best way to kind of create a community. I intend to make a Facebook group for the members that take the workshop so we can continue the conversation afterwards and share advice or recipes and whatnot
Mhm.
afterwards as well.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll go ahead and leave all of those links below so people can find you and they could also find just like all of the things that you're going to offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. What an amazing story Chelsea shared with us today. It was such a beautiful free birth that she described, and it just really warms my heart that she was able to know exactly the path that she wanted to go on and took full authority in choosing that direction of having a free birth. Again, this is not something that is for everyone, so don't be discouraged or feel any less than if you do not think a free birth is right for you. That is completely okay, and there is no right way to give birth. I do want to throw in just a friendly reminder that if you want to come on and share your home birth story with us here on the podcast, I do have a new submission form for anyone who wants to go ahead and submit their story. I will then reach out to you after your submission to get an interview scheduled. So make sure, if that's something you're interested in, you go ahead and find the link down in the show notes, and hopefully you'll be on the podcast in 2025. If you are currently planning and preparing for a home birth, then I'd love to share with you more information about the Empowered Home Birth course. This is a home birth based birth course, and inside this 8-week program, you will receive educational videos and weekly emails filled with additional resources for you to prepare for your empowering home birth. Once you purchase the course, you also get perks such as access to my entire resource library and private community chats. To enroll, click the link in the show notes and get started on the journey to your empowered home birth. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share with any family or friends who may benefit from these empowering stories. Also, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review to help others who are searching for this information find this podcast. I'll see you next week for another empowering home birth story.